It on. Well, welcome to podcast number 2 with Kris and Taylor and a dear friend, Dave Roberts. And he brought his own theme music. I mean, how can you not love a guy that brings his own theme music along? Dave, my friend.
Kris?
Everybody knows your name.
The ones that matter know my name.
Well, isn't that the truth? Oh my gosh. Thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't think of a better way to spend an hour.
Oh, man, what a day. What a day. How's your conference been?
Conference has been really, really good.
Good.
I had 2 workshops, one yesterday and bereaved parent 5 years later, and a grandparents workshop today. So both went well, both very fulfilling.
That's very cool.
And anytime I get a chance to do this, and it's great.
Yeah. Just a little background information of how I met Dave. We actually accidentally, I guess, ran across each other because of one person saying, he mentioned one gentleman's name at a presentation, and then that caught somebody's attention in the audience, and that person introduced us. We met for about 5 minutes and kind of been, in a way, soul brothers since that day. And literally probably spent way more time on the phone talking or Skyping
or FaceTime
yeah, than we ever met in person. Finally, this past year's past month, 2 months ago.
2 months ago in April.
Yeah. How'd you end up here?
Well, I could give you a smart remark and said I drove.
We flew.
I could give you a smart remark, but I just did, but I won't. How I got here is kind of a story in and of itself. My journey as a parent who experienced the death of a child started in Boston. So when I came here to present 2 workshops, it was like coming full circle. And one of the things I told my workshop participants is that one of the things I learned about grief, it's not only circular, but it comes full circle and it's cyclical. And I found myself being in the position where I started again. What happened is that my 18-year-old daughter, Janine, she was diagnosed with cancer about 10 months or 3 weeks after giving birth to my only grandchild, Brianna. And she had a rare type of cancer, it's called alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a connective muscle tissue cancer. Her oncologist said basically, look, we don't have the resources to deal with your sarcoma because that's not our area of expertise. So they referred us to Dana-Farber in Boston. And we took a 5-hour drive, and in a 5-minute consultation, we were basically told she had a stage 4 cancer. There was no cure for the cancer that she had, and the only hope that we were going to have for any type of recovery was aggressive chemotherapy to put it into remission until a cure could be found. So essentially, Kris, what I was told was, in the space of 5 minutes, is that you're probably going to be going to a land that you never envisioned going to, which is experiencing the death of your child. She addressed the challenges of her cancer very valiantly for about 10 months, and then she died with hospice services on March 1st, 2003. And interestingly, I found myself in the 11th year of the journey, but after her 10th year anniversary date in March, I've also embraced numerology as one of the many ways I've been able to develop clarity on the journey. And interestingly enough, the number 10, if you add 1 and 0, is 1, and the significance of the number 1 is beginnings. And so coming back to Boston is a new beginning. And as I told my groups, metamorphosis doesn't occur when things are going well. Metamorphosis usually occurs when you're faced with challenges. And in a way today, I'm very grateful to the initial experience I had in Boston, because it wouldn't have motivated me to develop into the person that I believe I've become today as a result of the challenges presented by Janine's illness and her death.
Wow. So, yeah, full circle to come back here. And yeah, wow. That's, so if I ask you, and it's interesting, I know a lot about you, but so if I ask you, who are you as a person right now? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not after we're done with this, but who are you right now? How would you define yourself?
I would define myself as a husband, a father, a teacher, a friend, and a parent who's experienced the death of a child. And one of the things that is different for me is Janine's death as part of my total experience as a human being. It has redefined me, but it isn't totally me anymore. It hasn't obscured the other parts of me that I had before. I see that as being part of my life experience as a human being, her death. And her death, which was a point of redefinition for me. Spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, everything. It just changed the entire core of the person that I am today.
Wow.
Wow.
You were your question. What were you gonna?
Hi, Taylor. Too. I neglected to say hello to you.
Yes,
I don't want.
Taylor's here with us.
I do not want to upset the
The
the tag team. The
I'm
producer.
just, yeah, I'm just
Producer.
making
She want to have me
sure.
back.
Yeah, she won't have me back.
That's
just
all right.
kick
We
you
can do
both
our.
off.
We'll do our own podcast.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
on our, who's going to run the computer? Though? Somebody's got to push the on and off button.
Yeah, somebody's got to press record and
Oh,
stop.
that's right. It's all these minor details we can figure.
Yeah,
we can figure.
I wanted to ask you about the crow and the wolf
Okay.
because I heard you mention it yesterday, and I saw you were wearing beautiful jewelry, the crow and the wolf on it, and I'm also friends with you on Facebook, and I see
Yep.
that you share photos that I really like about nature and spirituality and our
Mm-hmm.
connection to nature, and I'd just like to know where that started for you, and if you could explain the significance of those animals.
Absolutely, Taylor. The journey started for me in terms of embracing Native American animal medicine. And when we talk about Native animal medicine in the Native American sense, it's not medicine that you take, it's medicine that you apply. It's medicine or it's teachings, it's learnings, and this is my understanding of it, that help you develop deeper spiritual connections with yourself, the people around you, and the world around you. I was introduced to this in 2010, in November 2010, by a very dear friend by the name of Patty Farino in Long Island. And Patty is very much connected to the ethereal world. And I spent a weekend in Long Island with her that jump-started, accelerated my spiritual growth. And to tell you what happened, and before I get into the Crow and the Wolf, it's also about the power of intent. I had stated, I was witnessing a conversation with two dear friends of mine, very high-level spiritual conversation. And I looked up to the sky and I said, you know, God, I want to be where they are. This was in September 2010. In November, I had this spiritual experience of my life, and part of that experience was Patty introducing me to the teachings of Jamie Sams and Ted Andrews. Now, Jamie Sams has written a book called Medicine Cards, and which essentially has she has teachings of several animals. And what you would do with the medicine cards is you would spread them out and let your intuition draw you to the card that you believe is going to find the most meaning for you at that particular time. And Ted Andrews has written a book called Animal Speaks, and Andrews talks about numerology, nature, the trees, the directions, north, south, east, and west, in addition to animals, as being teachers of and helping us develop clarity in our spiritual journey. One of the animals that was two animals. First one that was very significant to me was crow. And crow in Native American literature is about, and according to Sam's teachings, it's about the union of past, present, and future to develop clarity on your journey and develop insight in terms of the paths that are open to you. And crow is about the past. Honor the past as your teacher, honor the present as your creation, and the future as your inspiration. Crow is also about sacred law. Their feathers bound the book of Native American law.
All right.
That's what we love about a theme song. It automatically comes on when you need it.
Whenever Dave walks in a room.
Whenever I walk in the room, people know my name. We are now in the vibrate mode. I'm sure that will be about 25 demerit points, and for the next time I engage in a podcast.
We
But-
just have to remember to tell people
But
to vibrate.
Right.
But it's also about sacred law, and I learned very quickly that in 18 years in human law wasn't enough time for Janine to be a part of my life, but in sacred law it was. And Crow is also about removing obstacles, and it has been. I've called on Crow medicine. I've called on Crow to help me through some very difficult times, and to remind me that, in fact, that I'm operating under a different set of rules. Wolf is about the teacher, the protector, the father, and they're a great communicator. So Crow and Wolf are very much with me. I like to think Crow and Wolf medicine are very much with me when I teach, when I companion an individual who is bereaved, and they've just. And I can tell you another story if you're interested in terms
Absolutely.
of the power of intent. And I had mentioned this in my workshop. I'm a person that likes stress-free flying. Okay, I never fly an airline where the ticket agent and the pilot are the same. You know, that's a rule of thumb that I have. Okay, and I've flown one airline specifically that I know is going to do the job for me. In Costa Mesa, California, I flew to Costa Mesa last year using a different airline. And it was an airline that I wasn't crazy about using, but at the time I didn't think I had a choice. As it turns out, I could have flown my own airline, but I typed in the airport information wrong. But as I look at it now, it was meant to happen this way, because I would have never learned a lesson about the power of intent. So I do some work with a shamanistic, holistic practitioner, and she knows about my fascination with and my interest in Native American animal medicine. And she said, you know, why don't you ask Crow to come along with the trip? Why don't you pray for Crow to be present with you and remove those obstacles, and because that's become your totem animal, your power animal. I said, okay. So I'll give it a shot. So I just said, Crow, if you hear me, I hope you can be with me on the trip, just to allay my fears, remove any obstacles, fear of flying. Now, what do you think the odds are of seeing at cruising altitude a crow on your left wing? A single crow?
Probably not very likely.
Yeah, I mean, as I was cruising, there was a single crow flying right along my left wing. Okay? So, and obviously I kind of figured we got this trip in the bag, the arrival, the first part of the journey. What do you think the chances are, Taylor, of seeing a single crow feather in the pristine grass of Costa Mesa?
Probably not very likely.
Not very likely. The day before we were scheduled to fly out, my wife Sherry and I were walking near the hotel, and in the pristine green grass there was a single crow feather that's sticking out. Sherry got it and gifted it to me and said, I know, here, this is for you. And I still had that feather. And then on the return trip there were 3 crows, and automatically I started looking at past, present, and future. But they were right in the hangar area, just in the takeoff area. And one of them was doing his stuff. You know how they get that little strut going? Uh-huh. Okay, they start strutting. And he was inspecting every airplane, literally. He was over there checking out. And I told Sherry, I said, I think they got a new maintenance supervisor. But I kind of figured he was with me on all legs of the trip. And we had a safe, uneventful trip home. I couldn't make this stuff up if I wanted to.
Right.
And I mean, I was so moved by the experience, I wrote an article about it on Open to Hope. Mm-hmm. And I do talk a little about my experiences with Native American animal medicine, and with crow, and with wolf, and a couple articles that I've written for them too. So I hope that answered your question. I was, mm-hmm. You know, it's when everybody asks me, I could talk about this for hours, right. Because I know it's one of the many influences that I've embraced.
You did mention sacred law and human law?
Yeah, you know, human law, you know, the death of a child defies all human law that we know. It's an unnatural event. We never expect to bury our children. Mm-hmm. The parent never expects to bury their children. They always expect to outlive to outlive their children. But in sacred law, take a look at this. I mean, sacred law is about the divine, and it's about the ethereal. And 18 years, in some of the readings that I've done and some of the experiences that I've had, 18 years was the time that Janine needed to teach the lessons that she was going to teach, and for me to learn what I was going to learn, and for her to learn from what she needed to learn in this incarnation of herself. And I realized after that 18 years is enough. I mean, I've done some readings and some research where actually, if you believe in the fact that sometimes the soul will contract for the number of years they're going to learn the lessons that they're going to learn in this life. Now, whether anybody else believes it, but I mean, to me, that's one possible explanation for that. How else could you explain, you know, if that wasn't the case, everybody would be dying the same age. Pretty much. Nobody, we would be outliving our children. And if you look at it, we wouldn't have any further lessons to learn as a result of the challenges. We'd become a pretty much stagnant society. If-
What do you think's brought you to be able to? What do you think it is in you? What is there something you had in you before Janine's death that allowed you to be curious to see those crows? Because it's like I agree with you. It's when you put your intent out there. I do believe that if you're in a position to see it, you'll see it.
Yep. It's if you're open to it and you embrace it.
Right, you're open to it and embracing it. Do you think there's something that was in you before that led you to a path to even accept the reality that this could even be? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you think were you open to any of this way of thinking before her death, or did it?
Honestly, I wasn't. Okay, I wasn't really open to this kind of thinking. My mother, as I look back now, and this is one of the things I've learned from crows in terms of looking at my past to appreciate the influence of my ancestors. As far and my mother being one, my mother was very much connected, very spiritual woman, a very just a profound presence in my life. But I rejected. I looked at. I was probably from the show me state. I mean, if I was from St. Louis, like, show me this exists. Give me physical evidence that this exists. But what happened, and I think it was my mother's influence that probably, I think, kick-started me down the road. And I began to see, now I see how you see the world. But the other thing, Kris, I was compelled, almost forced by my circumstances to embrace a different perspective. Had I had operated under the same set of rules that I operated after Janine's death and prior to Janine's death, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I would be stagnant, I would be stuck, I would be bitter. So I was basically I was forced to embrace a different, I don't want to say forced, but I was compelled, and I made the conscious choice to embrace a different perspective because I could see 2.5 years into this journey that the way I wanted to do it wasn't going to work, that I had to embrace something differently. I had to embrace a different perspective to begin to thrive and to begin to get through it and to begin to find meaning again.
Taking that step's not easy.
No. It requires a tremendous leap of faith. And
Absolutely.
And you need to trust that the universe is going to provide. And trust is a very fragile commodity anyway. And it was always fragile for me. And it's still something I struggle with periodically. But the fact that I can acknowledge it, I can still struggle with it, means that I'm going to be in a better position to address it. But overall,
absolutely.
Had I had not taken this perspective, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't feel at peace and as content as I am right now.
Well, I think a little bit of that, and I relate to you. I see the parallels because I don't trust in everything either, but I think that's what opens our minds to the ability to question and to learn deeper. I don't think, if I only trusted my way of thinking, when you would tell me these things, I would say, well, he's wrong, and I'm not even going to consider that.
That's right.
But I absolutely consider it because there is no doubt in my mind, I see your belief in that, and it inspires me to want to learn it. More about it. And I think that's what's so cool about getting to meet people like yourself who are open to that way of thinking. And it's not easy to take that leap of faith. It's probably one of the the death of a child is a choice, and it's scary. But I think even taking that leap of faith is even scarier.
Yes.
Because now you're having to let go of.
You're actively moving on.
Yeah.
Well, not moving on, but you're actively living a life after the death of your child.
And it also is about change. And change is something that we as a human race have trouble embracing. Even though we know it's going to be in our best interest, it's still unfamiliar territory. And for individuals I've worked with, they've struggled with the concept of change because it's unfamiliar. And even though they know that the dance that they were doing prior was going to lead to negative consequences, they still want to do the same dance because it's familiar.
Yeah.
When you look at it, change is really the spice of life. That's
Oh,
what-
absolutely.
And embracing that, and having faith that what you embrace is going to come to fruition and give you consequences, rewarding consequences
Yeah.
beyond your comprehension.
Yeah.
And that's what I've had to do, and it has. It's been a tremendously joyous ride in many ways, intermixed with sadness, with pain. But you embrace it all. It's every part of it you embrace and you learn from.
And it's not done. I mean, and that's no. And you'll always I think that you're right. It'll always be days of challenge and days of distrust, but days of success. But as when you say that, when you said at the very beginning of this, it's about the medicine, the applying.
Yeah.
How did you say that?
It's not medicine you take. It's medicine you apply.
Oh my gosh, that is. I am not a proponent of taking pills to make pain go away. I mean, I'll take a Tylenol for a headache, but when I'm dazed and confused and struggling with something, I don't want to take a pill for depression. I'd rather sit down and figure out what's going on. And I love that. It's not something you take; it's something you apply.
Yep.
And that is so. Okay, we talked about the crow. Now about the wolf.
The wolf is about the teacher, the father, the protector, the communicator. And so when I'm teaching, whether it be a group of college students or one of my workshops, that's the medicine I will call in. I embody those characteristics of that animal to teach. When I went and that's what I do. I love wolf. I wrote an article called Carlos Santana and the Shape-Shifting Wolf, and what happened is I had seen, one of my bucket list things was to see Carlos Santana in concert. I did, and he had an album called Shapeshifter, which was his newest CD. And the night after I saw the concert, I had a dream about a wolf who shape-shifted. When you shape-shift, you change, you adopt whatever form it is for you to thrive in the moment. That's how I look at this. So he elongated his form, got through this little crack in the fence, and he stood right by my left-hand side, and he let me pet him. And he just stood right on my, and I know there's significance with left and right as far as masculine and feminine. I think the left is feminine, the right is masculine, or I may have it reversed. But he was there with me. And so then the next day I was moved to get the Carlos Santana CD. And the minute I opened up the CD, I saw this prayer called the Great Spirit Prayer. It was by a Lakota chief in the 1800s. And one of the lines in it is, it alludes to the fact that give me the power, and I'm paraphrasing this, to fight my worst enemy, which is me. And how we fight ourselves when we go with transitions. It's like the Civil War within. And that spurred a whole new. How can you look at the connections from Carlos Santana to a shape-shifting wolf to the Great Spirit Prayer? Look at all the connectivity in that through just seemingly unrelated events. And this is what I've learned to appreciate, because those connections give me more, I think, information about life, and also gives me more information about death. And that death isn't the end of everything. Death is a transition into another form, and I really believe that. And I believe that if we want to, we can choose to come back and do this again.
Do you ever tell people that and they look at you like you're full of beans?
Yeah.
How does that affect you?
It doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah.
Because here's the thing, my experience isn't your reality, and your reality isn't my experience. I tell any group.
Say that one more time.
Your experience isn't my reality, and my reality isn't necessarily your experience. Okay, and whenever I do a workshop, I'll throw stuff out there to say, look, this is how I see it for me. It doesn't mean this has to be the way it is for you, because there are a variety of different ways to walk down the same path.
Absolutely.
Right comes in a lot of different forms. I'm going to throw out my experience. All I ask is that you consider it, you listen to it, and not judge it.
Yeah.
And maybe down the road, some of this may click. You might say, I see what that Roberts guy was talking about. Because time is also relative in this journey. I don't look at time as linear anymore. It's more in terms of cycles. So I mean, I might tell something to Taylor. Taylor might look at me like I got three heads and say, "Where's this guy coming from?" But I might tell her, I said, Taylor, just keep it under your hat, consider it, and see if it bears fruit for you down the road. She might call me 5 years later and say, you know what, the conversation we had, I see it now.
Yeah.
I see it now. So you sit with it, and you can't force people to see your experience or their experience. You can only tell them to be open to it, to research it, and to discover the truths on their own.
Yeah.
Because that's how we become empowered.
And there is so much truth in that. Just because I totally believe what you're saying. There are, yeah, when somebody tries to shove their belief down your throat, or they try to force their experience on you, it doesn't work. I think the way you're open to sharing it, and I agree with you, it's you can tell you're a teacher. I can so tell you're a teacher, because how many times, I can think back in my past of a high school woodworking teacher I had, or any teacher. I'll be doing something, and all of a sudden I'll go, "Oh, that's what they meant," and it could have taken years
That's right.
for that to dawn on me to
That's
really
right.
say, "Now I see what they were sharing with me." I had to be in the right place to be able to see it.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, it is, and I can't make you see your own truth. You can only see your own truth for what it is.
Yeah. But that takes a lot of practice.
It does, and it also takes the ability for us, I think, as teachers, as therapists, as companions to others on the journey, to know enough to put something out there, detach from what you put out there, and let that person discover it on their own, with knowing the fact that you're there as a sounding board.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the key to any good therapist, any good person that works with in human services, is their ability to throw something out there and empower the person to discover the way that they want to apply in their own lives.
So put the idea, share the idea,
Yep.
just like you're doing with us.
Mhm.
Share the idea. You
Yep.
detach from it. You walk away. You're still you.
Yep.
Even if I throw rotten eggs at you,
That's right.
you still walk away.
Yep.
You're still you and have your experiences. You're still Dave Roberts.
That's right.
Nothing's changed.
Nope. As long, and I would say this, and I tell my students this, first of all, I tell them question everything. Don't take a static approach. Don't take what I say at face value. Question everything, okay? But do it in a way that's respectful. Do it in a way that your concerns are going to be heard. My mentor, Don, a brilliant guy, said to me, and I will take this with me, and this is a valuable lesson in terms of dealing with yourself and with others. As long as what you represent is with honor and integrity and consistent with your moral code, it's all good. The outcome will take care of itself. If it doesn't, it's not because of something that you did, because if you stick to your own moral code, any other outcomes are beyond your control. You can only stick to what is true for you. And also, I've had to self-evaluate times when I haven't done that, and then I take a look and say, why? But we can learn from everything. Mistakes are part of the deal here.
Yeah,
and we can learn
it's
from it.
impossible to even. I mean, you or I or anybody, Taylor, we can all sit down and say, this is what we believe, and this is how we do it. We still struggle.
That's right.
We still struggle. But that's when we question.
Yep.
And that's what puts us back on track.
Yep.
And the questioning helps deepen our belief,
Yep.
no matter what that belief.
Yep.
And I really think in turn it also allows us to deepen our respect for other people's beliefs.
And how I've looked at this, I saw a saying, so we're not human beings living a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings living a human experience. And if we look at it from that particular perspective, then what we learn, good and bad in this life, contributes to our continued spiritual involvement.
Wow. Taylor, pipe in on this. What do you think of?
I'm just soaking it in. I mean, I like what you're saying. I mean, when you're talking about crow and wolf and spirituality, I like that because I've always
Yep.
been a really spiritual person, and
Yep.
I do question what things mean a lot of the time. And I wasn't raised to be religious. I never, and for a short period of time, I really studied the effects that organized religion was having on the world and society, and I questioned the fact that people who told me that they were religious didn't act that way.
That's
and
right.
I became very disillusioned with spirituality in general, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I felt something missing. You know, even though I wanted to detach from anything spiritual, I was, show me that there's evidence of this.
That's
Otherwise, I want nothing to do with it. And Kris and I have had multiple discussions about religion and religious people and belief or lack thereof. But there's times, and I'm looking into Buddhism. I'm dabbling in Buddhist literature and trying to understand the self, the spiritual self, because there's something missing in me, I think, that I'd like to tap into, but there's also, I want to be able to do it right. So there's a lot of self-doubt and, finding things that are right for you could be difficult when there's so many options and choices and avenues.
Yeah.
But, I guess that's what I have to say about that.
Taylor asked me that. Well, we talked in the podcast before this about self-doubt and how self-doubt can, in a way, self-doubt paralyzes you. And I don't think, I told her I struggle with self-doubt. How about you? What do you?
Yeah, it's something that I do struggle with. I struggle with it all the time, and it's something that I think as we get older, I've learned with my own personal experience with Janine's death. I don't take anything for granted. I tell my students, I'm only as good as my last class. So I mean, I could have 11 years of great evaluations, and I could come off like a total dweeb, and I've got 25 students telling 25 others, or telling 25 others, don't take this guy, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
So I don't take that for granted, and I always question what I do. Did it have the? And it goes from like self-doubt to self-evaluation.
Yeah.
But the self-doubt motivates me to self-evaluate, and I always try to find out what it is I could do better. So if you look at it, self-doubt is a part of the experience, but we can also transform that into self-doubt, spurring on self-evaluation. And I think in terms of what you were saying, I haven't seen too many young adults who haven't questioned their own concept of spirituality. And especially when you mention God, you might as well be mentioning, taking a trip to Mars, especially with a lot of young adults, because their belief system isn't all that it doesn't stop in them with God, which is why I like the Native American spirituality piece, because you can use aspects of nature in the physical world to develop those interconnections between yourself and others. And it's a really kind of physical, in the moment. The lessons that you get from nature, do you ask yourself, how does this apply to my situation now? How does it apply to a transition that I'm utilizing now? How does this apply to a lifelong goal that I have? You can go anywhere with this, and you might find that the teaching is relevant. Even if it isn't, release the expectation that it's going to be relevant for you in this moment, but it'll be relevant for you down the road. But the fact that you've stated your intent, that you went to spiritually evolve and there's something missing, the fact that you stated that intent, the universe and its field of plenty will provide all the resources that you need, providing that you're walking in awareness, you're paying attention, and again, and I'll repeat this, and you embrace it when it happens and don't question it. And it will happen. And it may not happen in the time frame, but it will happen as long as you keep pursuing that goal.
So I just have to constantly, let's see if I can say this right. I need
First of all, there's no such thing as saying anything right. You say it from your heart. So,
okay.
So don't worry about being politically correct with me.
Okay. Well, I'll just say this. I have to constantly remind myself or just be aware, be open to any messages that I can interpret as relevant to me. And I couldn't do that during that very angry period of denying any kind of spiritual or emotional connection with anything, because there was a point in my life where it was shortly after I moved out of my mom's house. I was just inside I was very angry, just thinking about my past a lot, and I said, nothing spiritual helped me, so why should I look for something fulfilling like that? But and I might have mentioned this before, and I've mentioned this to a couple of my friends as well, but ever since I started looking into Buddhism and other spiritual avenues, when I do meditate, or when I do take a walk and think about nature and my connection with nature, and when I read about anthropology and evolution of humans and our brains and just animals and our connection with everything, it makes me feel very relieved to feel, or I'll have experiences like watching the fireworks on Independence Day was really emotional, just because I saw everybody on the riverside taking pictures, and everybody was connected in that moment, watching this beauty happen right before us. And when I go to the ocean, I feel, every time I go to the ocean, it's like, I say it every time, it's like I can take a deep breath and just say, okay, I am small, I zoom out, and all of my troubles seem so trivial, and everything that I'm dealing with just kind of fades away, and I feel better.
And if that works, then that's what you do. My daughter Janine was a Tigger fan, and Tigger was one of her favorite Disney characters. And she liked Tigger because he bounced and he was the only one. So I think we're kind of all Tiggers on the journey of spiritual knowing and development. And it doesn't matter which path we take or how we bounce along that path. It's just whatever's going to work for us. But there's a lot of different ways to become aware within yourself and aware of what brings you comfort. And you can take a look, there's God in everything. If you can take a look, there's God in nature. There's anytime an animal comes across my path, it's significant. And it's a significant message. And I consult the Sam's book, look at the lesson, and try to do a journal piece on how that applies to me.
Do you physically write journal? How often do you do that?
Usually I will journal, and I talked about this yesterday at one of my workshops. I journal now when there's a specific purpose for me journaling. If there's a dream, if there's a particular animal message that I'm getting, I will write down its relevance to me in the moment. So I will do that probably maybe once every couple of weeks, and there's no time frame. It's just when I feel like the mood, the mood moves me, or intuition moves me to write something. Because really all the writings that I do, and Kris will tell you, that's kind of like my ongoing journal, in terms of the lessons that I've learned, the connections that I've made. And I journal now in the hopes of not only understanding more about myself, but helping others in the process. So my journal has a more of an outer purpose in terms of trying to help anybody else who may read, what I have to say. So, but yeah, I basically just do it when the mood moves me. The other thing I have to tell you about Crow, to backtrack, if you don't mind.
No.
One of the other things, Crow medicine, in terms of helping me honor my past, that influence and that message helped me in spirit forgive my father for leaving me when he was 5 years old. And I had always was angry for the fact that he wasn't around. And that was probably the first significant loss I had when I was 5, was when my dad left. And in prayer, I was able to forgive him, and actually his gift to me was letting go of me. He left so that I could thrive, because he couldn't live in a traditional marriage for a variety of different reasons. And I realized his ultimate act of love was by leaving. And I couldn't see it. That's part of the transformative process. I saw it as a curse. Now I look at it as a blessing.
That's interesting. I've never heard anything like that before. I've never met anyone who could move past the anger of a parent leaving them. And even today, whenever I do speak about growing up in a family where my parents divorced when I was very young, very, very young, and I lived with my father for a year in 8th grade, but there was never two consistent people in my household. And it was very hard growing up like that. But whenever I mention that and that anger, I do get people, adults, sometimes elderly adults, come up to me and say, you know, I still haven't moved past the anger of my father leaving me or my mother leaving me, but I've never met anyone think of it as an act of love.
It took me 56 years to figure that out, that it was an act of love. But and because of that, I was able to appreciate two other male influences in my life who were father figures. And I always said, well, I always was angry at my dad because he robbed me of having a father. But in reality, when he left, I had two other father figures. One was my Uncle Jimmy, who modeled integrity and honesty, and my Uncle Dave, who gave me my love of sports. And so I looked at this and I said, geez, I had two father figures after you left. I had two males that took care of me. But it took me and also I discovered, in terms of talking with Patty, she said, I'm getting the sense that your father is very upset where he is, the fact that he didn't see you grow and that he left. And that gave me more impetus to say, look, I forgive me long ago for that. And I realized that what you did was the ultimate act of love. And what I've also learned is that when we even transition in spirit, we take unsolved challenges from the physical plane, and that can sometimes keep us stuck to further spiritually evolve after death. And I just said, look, I'm letting you off the hook. I said, I forgave you. You need to move on. This is part of an old contract with us. Your contract with me was to leave so that my mother and I could have a life. That's what your contract was for me in the 4 or 5 short years that you were a part of my life. This is what you needed to do. This is what you taught me, the meaning of letting go. This is what you had to teach me. It took me, again, a long time to figure that out.
Don't you think that, when I hear you talk about that, because I think that, do you think that when you can find that clarity and answer some of those questions, it unmuddies the water, I think, and it's kind of like walking with glasses with every one of these these unanswered questions or these things you carry. It's like having spots on your glasses. Every time you can clarify one of those and find peace with it and walk with it, it's kind of like you clear that glass up, and I think it allows you to be more aware of your surroundings. You know, I've always said, instead of seeing the meadow, it took me time to be able to see the blade of grass. And I think that's what, because Taylor, you've mentioned before in the past, the trying to find peace with some different things, and the how do you find what you should do? How do you find your passion? How do you find these things? I think you walk more aware than you think you walk.
I would believe that. And it's like I mentioned yesterday, my biggest hindrance, I think, in growing up and trying to find out who I am is just self-doubt. I have no faith in myself whatsoever. And so I've just been kind of relying on outside forces to drive me wherever I need to go, but I'm not present. It's like sometimes I feel, when I do have spiritual experiences or where I feel connected, I don't have those as often as I wish I did, and I feel like I should feel that way most of the time, but it's like I'm just a shell sometimes, and I'm just kind of going through the motions, and it sounds crazy because I know I'm young and
I think that's the thing. Nothing sounds crazy. I think that's the thing you have to be. That comes in, I don't want to say it comes with experience and time and questioning, and you question and you're willing to learn, and that's why I think you're only you know where you are with it. But it's funny, from the outside looking in, you're further along. In my mind, you're further along when I look at my experience. You're very far along in your experience. I've said to you 1,000 times, for somebody your age to walk where you're walking and get what you're getting, I can't imagine what you'll be able to share when you're my age. It took me a lot of years to figure. It's taken it, to get where I am. It's taken, like you talked earlier. We don't. Sometimes we're not blessed with these opportunities, and that might sound insane when I say to somebody, Blake's death absolutely blessed me with opportunities. I didn't see that at the beginning. but now I see the opportunities that his death has opened the doors to me.
And the other thing I would say, and this is just my observation, you can tell me that my observations are off.
Okay.
Or that I have cranial inversion syndrome.
Okay.
So
I'll keep that in mind as a response.
Just tell me, Dave, you got CIS, and I'll know exactly
you got
what
cyst, Dave.
You got cyst, Dave.
I think I've heard that before.
Has
Feel
someone
free
told
to
you
use
that
that,
you've had that before, Chris?
Feel free. I also want to tell you something about organized religion. I had stopped going to church long ago until I found a really great Methodist church that I go to, that the pastor really knows how to build a community of faith. But one time I went to a Catholic church, and this was about 10-15 years before Janine died, and the person next to me passed out. Because I hadn't been to church in a long time, so I figured it was God's way of telling me, you stay the hell out of my house. So I listened to him, and I went back. Oh, can we say hell on the air? I'm
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Shit, damn.
Oh, yeah,
Hey.
good.
It's my snowball mic.
That's
I can
right.
say what the fuck I want.
That's right. There you go. And I don't want to hear any more of that shit coming out of your mouth again. That's all I can say.
We're having technical difficulties.
Yeah,
Please stand by.
There'll be a point in this.
There'll be a-
Beep, 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 beep,
Yeah.
beep, beep.
But what I would tell you is, and again, my observation is not to beat yourself up for authentically sharing your experience towards how you're feeling. If it wasn't for the experiences you had, you've gone from being maybe angry to empty in some ways. And maybe that's a sign of progress. You're no longer pissed at
Right.
what's going on, but you feel empty as a result of the experience.
But I have the opportunity is there for positive things.
Exactly. So you ask yourself, what things are going to help fill the void of emptiness? What's going to help me fill my cup? Is it communing with nature? Is it finding truth in Buddhism? Is it finding a different path? That's going to, and there may come a day, and I guarantee there will come a day, if you continue on this path, you may look back and be able to forgive those who hurt you down the road. You may be able to do what I did. And there's no time frame for it, but you may be able to look at it and say, this is what the experience taught me. And you may be able to look at it down the road differently. And that would be my wish for you, is that I always wish that for everybody, that they can look at what's happened to them as a death of a child. And I said this in my workshop yesterday, that you see this as part of your human life experience. That it's a part of who you are. It certainly has redefined you, but it's a part of your total human experience, and that you have other gifts to offer.
Wow. It's interesting.
And by the way, I like your stuff on Facebook. You've got some good stuff, and you've got some good insight.
I've told her many times,
Yeah.
you need to share more of what you're thinking.
No.
Just put it out there.
And I could sit and talk to you three. I could talk to both of you for hours.
Yes,
you know, so yeah, I mean, yeah, you could teach me.
4-hour podcast.
4-hour podcast.
It was interesting because after today's workshop that Taylor and I did, I had a lady come up to me, and she said something to me that caught me off guard completely, but at the same time, I was like, wow, I've never had anybody say that to me. She walked up, she grabbed my hand, and she said, the way you teach has a very Buddhist way about it. And that's interesting because I've read, things, I am not a guy, I don't read a lot. So, but when I've read some things that, when it comes to Buddhism or different things, I'm like, wow, I get that very quickly. I understand their way of thinking. And so it's, I think, just having the curiosity now, I never really noticed it before now till she said that to me. I'm like, that's very interesting, and it makes me want to learn more about that. So for you to say that, it's walking in awareness. Because she could have said that to me and it just went right over my head.
Yep.
And
But
not being aware,
yeah.
but it means something.
And it's so hard, now that I'm learning more about Buddhism and spirituality, I'm learning about the importance of being aware, being self-aware. And through that, I also notice how easy it is to get distracted.
Yep.
Or to get, one day you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, how long have I been off the path? How did I get
That's
here?
right.
What happened?
Yeah.
You think you're on a road, you're doing something right, and then something happens, you get distracted, and For me, it's school or family things, and then one day I'll wake up and say, how long have I been distracted? It's like I fell asleep and I don't remember when, and now I'm awake.
And that's something too. If you're into journaling, that's something even to write about the experience and try to develop those connections. Even if you don't like to write, I tell people carry a handheld recorder with you and talking to the mic. And if anybody asks why you're talking, just tell them you got money in the bank.
Yeah.
You know, and just do it that way. But those are the times when you kind of detach yourself from the experience and you have a chance to look at it, then you can write about it and say, okay, in hindsight, what was going on with me? What if I want to change this? What steps do I need to take to get proactive to do this? And so anything that happens to us are opportunities for us to learn. They're neither good nor bad. They're just opportunities for improvement.
Yeah. So 1 year ago, we were doing the work. We were doing the Birdhouse Project workshop in Costa Mesa, and during the workshop, we were talking about who we were, and you said, we were going around the room to share, and you said content.
Yep.
How has that grown or changed since then?
You know, I kind of think my definition of contentness is one. I think it was tied into acceptance of the fact that this is the life I am now destined to lead, even though it wasn't one that I wanted to lead. But I'm content with the lessons that I have been taught as a result of that. I'm content because I know Janine continues to work through me in a lot of different ways. She is a part of everything that I do. I've embodied the characteristics in her life that she manifested in her life, and it's become a part of me. So Janine and I are kind of partners. We kind of teach together now. So I'm content knowing that I've been able to keep that relationship in that type of pure spiritual form, and that she's with me. I'm also content because I think it's grown to the fact that the more I understand about myself in relationship to the world and in relationship to myself, I realize that there is so much more beyond the human experience, and I just marvel at the connectivity of everything. If I hadn't mentioned Neil Peart in my keynote speech, I would have never met you.
Yeah, that's very true, because I didn't go to your keynote.
No.
We would have missed
Yep.
paths then.
And if it wasn't for a mutual acquaintance of ours suggesting that, you ought to get in touch with Kris, we would have never found out that Neil and you had parallel journeys.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
And that we resonated with all of it.
Yeah.
And so just continually marveling at this and knowing that there's much more beyond this life.
Yeah.
And there is much more that we're yet to experience. I think in depth will be more in terms of what we experience.
I think you are walking in awareness, my friend.
I certainly strive to do that every day.
Well, it's a mere. It's what you do is by doing that is you encourage others like myself to do the same. When we talk, I walk away from that with that feeling. It validates the path I'm on, or it helps me question the path I'm on and help re-guide. I think you're right. Your experiences, you're willing to share them and walk on. And it's up to me to see that and to take with me what I want.
That's right.
Or to put away what I don't want. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we sit down and have these discussions, and I think that's how we grow.
That's all. It's just basically bearing witness to each other's experiences and journeys, and without judgment.
Yeah. Without putting you on the spot, if I were to ask you one word, content last year, what would you say today?
At peace. That's 2 words.
We'll accept that. We'll accept 2.
At peace.
That's not really a word.
No, I'll say peaceful.
Peaceful.
Yep.
Well, we're going to finish with that. Dave, thank you.
Oh, Kris, my pleasure. Taylor, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
I had a blast.
Oh, me too. We'll do it again. We'll do it again another day.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to, because there's much more to share.
Oh yeah, it's like you say, it's about growing, learning, and the journey.
And there's much more to my Long Island experience that I shared today, but it was the most powerful spiritual experience I've had in my life.
Wow.
That's all we can hope for anyone.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
All right.